I wanted to add a little summary of the security features. So basically, we have a few different layers if we look at the Synology itself. I'm just going to go to File Station. Maybe that's going to be explaining it a bit. We have file-based services. We have application-based services. That's the first level. File-based services are running, for example, over Windows shares and are basically native daemons right on the level of the operating system. Then we have the application-based services, like, for example, the most simple, which is FileStation, which allow the access to files, also to, let's say, modify some permissions, to even share files via HTTP links or something like that. So basically, this is an access layer. We have meta services like the file universal search service or the backup utility, active backup. We have management layer like the export of the backups for the Synology configuration. And for each, there is different levels or different points where you run the restrictions. The firewall basically wraps around different kinds of services, but as you see in the management dialog for the firewall, they have rule sets that exactly match a service type. I mean, technically, that's still going to turn into a firewall rule that blocks some port. There is no user level firewalling or something like here. But basically, this is an environment layer, a bubble around the Synology. And then there's the permissions that concern the management UI, which is already inside this bubble or onion layer, maybe if you want. And some of them are now actual user restrictions, some are subnet restrictions. So you have to split that. Basically these access permissions here, they're gonna be in the web server application basically. Whereas the access permissions for a user to access the DSM management UI, they're gonna be in that application code or in a little proxy layer in the web server if we're lucky, but basically they're more likely in the application. As you can see, you can still have IP-based rules here. So you can have things that, like if you have a group of or an IP subnet range that only has critical clients, then you can do things with that. And finally, you have the per user permissions, the normal ones, or per group. And yeah, the external tunneling with Quick Connect is basically a bypass to this whole security concept by running a tunnel into your NAS. So that's why this should not be used, because it bypasses some parts of the security layers. What I've done with running a VPN service on the NAS is similar. And that's why it's important to actually also only use that for a single purpose and to have security firewall rules maybe that implement the same restriction. Sorry, words are not easy for me at this time. And I don't mean the 4 a.m. when I'm recording this. I mean the time in my life where the words are coming easily. Whatever. Yeah, if you use Quick Connect, which I also do for some NAS, you should have a long look at this part and only expose the services that you want. And you should be aware that that turns that NAS into a hostile component on your network. Because if I break into the DSM UI, which the last exploit for has not been more than 5 months ago. I don't recall when it was, but it's not longer than that. So basically, break through this you have a system on the network that you can abuse. And like I said before, there is no good way to have outgoing firewall rules in this firewall. So unless you happen to have like I forgot the name, Project Aurora or something style host-based firewall network, where all your systems are protected from each other, like in the perfect sense, where you have a central firewall that filters all the traffic between all systems. So not a gateway, but a firewall that sits underneath all communications. It's going to be a hostile component. So this should not be on. And if it's on, then you have to be aware that the role of your NAS has now changed. The other thing, or the lowest layer, is with the log files, like we saw, the SMB logs. Oops, that's here. Logging. No, I misclicked again. It's here. Okay. So now, in my case, for example, the setup that I made here, I would see every stupid temporary file that is created, but also every file that some attacker creates. I wouldn't see if they're reading my supercritical information, and I wouldn't see if they overwrite it with nothing. Makes no sense the way that I set it up. So basically, I could also just set all of them. Not a smart idea usually, because it's going to be too much. And the other thing is you have to install the stupid protocol center. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have a proper view of the logs. Which is done, well, basically like all applications. I still have my services crashed here. I think they should be available after the rebuild now. I'm not sure why. Let's see. Yeah, it's working now. So maybe I just need to log in and out or something. I don't care. You have to install this thing. Oh yeah, and there's the security advisor, which is so awesome. Basically, this thing should not report anything that you're not aware of. So I installed Optware, that's true, yes. And I enabled SNMP. I'm gonna have to see if it stops if I turn on SNMP version 3. Basically, yeah, you have to be aware of anything this thingy reports, and should report it to your security guys, like regularly. Yeah, I think it needs a log out and log in. Okay, that's it. I just wanted to add that you have different layers of security in this thing. Even if you have a one web interface where you do the management of these security layers, your changes affect different areas of the system, and you should keep a mental model of that. Even though the UI keeps this mental model from you, you're not going to be able to be aware of what you're doing if you work in this thing. But if you manage to memorize the different layers of security in the Synology, then you're going to be able to have a security policy, even though this thing is not an enterprise product and does not offer you the ways to have a managed security policy. The last thing is, which I didn't mention yet, there is the Synology Central Management System. I use it normally. So my more important NAS systems are all in that CMS, that's the name. And that allows you to have these settings centrally managed, which is great. The one exception would be if this NAS holds super confidential data, like, for example, security documentation or specific backups that you don't want to be exploited when everything else is exploited. In that case, this NAS should not be part of the central management system, and it should not share usernames or passwords or anything of that kind with the other systems. What you can do is to attach it to the central management and then detach it so that it gets all the baseline configuration. You could even do that in repetition maybe, but still the usernames and all these things have to be separate. Normally, if you do your job well, then you have some system standard, some baseline policy that you set up on everything. You might have a checklist or screenshots or whatever. And as long as you have that and apply it to your Synology, then you can apply it to CMS to put it on all systems, and you can apply it on a single one that should be protected from what the others do. So basically, the easiest example, if this is the backup storage for your Veeam environment or something, then you don't want that to have the same passwords. It should not be exploitable the way that the others can be exploited. It would be idiotic if you did that. Yeah, one thing I skipped. What I normally do if I have critical data is I install the thing. uh, Something with VMs. I don't know the word anymore. Virtual Machine Manager. And I normally have like a bare metal NAS that is on a management network and has a dedicated interface there. And that's the one you connect to for doing the management, all the stuff that we just saw. And I have a VM on that, a virtualized Synology with the same security settings that provides the actual services and is on the client network. Due to stupidity of Synology, you have to have an IP address on the interface that is facing the client network, but you can basically protect that with the firewall. Like you have your bare metal NAS, and that has 4 network interfaces. One I take for management. That's the one that you actually reach, the bare metal one. Then you have 3 that are client facing or something. And you put that in a virtual switch for the VMs. And the Synology is still going to force you to have an IP address on this interface, even though it's a virtual switch and you don't want to use it. So you're going to have a dummy IP address, which is not going to have any services exposed. So your DSM is not going to be available on that. Your DSM is going to be on the management IP. Sorry, that was so complicated. On the management network interface. Yeah, okay, fuck. So once you have a virtual NAS running on this thing, you can set up this protection schedule here so that it's gonna run regular snapshots of that VM. I don't have one. Okay, sorry. Gonna show that separately. And the idea is to basically have an independent snapshot layer below the VM that is running the services. So normally I have one VM for providing services. And there's a snapshot schedule on the underlying hardware, which of course means that you have to manage that and check on it also like quarterly or monthly or something. But that's basically a security approach that I put underneath these layers that you have in a Synology, so that basically you have OS level hardening, application hardening, firewalling, and then you can have data protection in a different layer below, which I highly recommend. I'm gonna make one more video with that. Okay, but I think that was a halfway complete summary now. I hope when I stop recording that I'm not gonna think of the next thing that I'm still should still add.